going to be a hard video to make. Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Rebecca if you're new here. If not, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about what I like about America. That is my baby. We had the opportunity to live overseas for a couple of years and our circumstances changed. We had to move back. And I'm not going to lie, it took me months to be okay with that. I was struggling. I did not like America. I was scared of it, to be honest. And there are just so many things going on here that I am not very happy about. To try to get over that, to try to put myself in a better mental state about it, I decided that I was going to sit down and try to come up with a list of everything that I do like about America. Hey, noisy. This is not your video. The audacity. First, to try to get like a snapshot of the US and kind of a bigger picture, I asked both my overseas friends and my American friends and family, like, what are some stereotypes that come to mind about Americans and America? So these are some of the answers. Loud and direct, friendly, large portions, free soda refills, large people, happy-go-lucky and lighthearted, stubbornness, pride, and arrogance. We're helpful, untraveled, and ignorant. Quite a variation, I would say. Lots of positive, but also very negative as well. And that's just the way it is. Like, those are stereotypes. Obviously, it's not going to fit everybody. I also polled a bunch of people over these last several months about why they like America. Some of the answers were, it's home, it's what you know, it's what you're familiar with, and there's something kind of beautiful about that. A lot of people also said nothing, which is very sad. And even the people that do really like living in America and they do think that America is the greatest, they still are pretty unhappy about certain things, whatever floats your fancy. There are many different problems you can pick from. But that's the frustrating thing about it, is that there are some problems that are making America kind of unbearable. Here's my list of things that I have taken months to accumulate. There's a lot of duality and a lot of contradictions to this because it feels like everything that I could come up with that was positive, there was a flip side to it. There's something horrible and negative about it. Okay, you gotta move. You're just too noisy, but you're so cute. First, America is the land of opportunity. It's the American dream. You can start with nothing and end up super rich. You can do the craziest things and make a bunch of money. There's a lot of career opportunity here, and the relative wealth of the country is just generally much higher. So in that way, it does feel pretty blessed as a country. Flip side is the disparity between the rich and the poor just feels like it's growing and growing. Everybody is frustrated with the inflation that's happening. People are being outpriced from homes, even in more rural areas that have no right to be as expensive as they are. And there's also something to be said about the pressure that is put on the people here. Like, I lived in New Zealand for a couple years and I did not have this overwhelming pressure to do more, to be more. I was fine being a stay-at-home mom, but here it's like you step foot and there's this constant feeling of I have to turn my hobby into a side hustle. There's just this pervasive toxic culture of never being content. And I think that that is very much so pushed by corporations and just capitalism in general. Your job is your personality here and it is your identity. And for example, for a while, me and my husband, we lived in New York City, and there's the phrase, if you can make it in New York City, you can make it anywhere. And we did make it in New York City, and I have never been more depressed in my life. Like, it was so horrible. Next thing that I like about America is that it is iconic. The US really has set the stage for the whole world's imagination. So much of the art, the movies, the music industry is pumped from the US. Like, here, I think we are the world leaders in movies. If you think of Hollywood, if you think of Disney. On top of that, many wonderful music genres have come out of the US, like jazz and bluegrass, rap, rock and roll, and you have some of the most world famous musicians come from the US. Like, it feels weird lumping these people together, but like Elvis Presley, Aretha Franklin, Beyonce, Michael Jackson, Bob Dylan, like the list can go on and on and on. And then you also have some of the most iconic celebrities in general. Like Marilyn Monroe, I think, is the definition of iconic for me. And really, I don't have much negative to say about this point. I think it is just really cool that America has created so many beautiful things in the art world, in the music world, in the movie world. I guess the only thing I could come up with that's the flip side of that is just kind of the unrealistic standard that it puts on the rest of the world. Along with that, the cultural homogenization. It really kind of bothers me that, for a small example, regional accents are disappearing because we all are watching Hollywood, and so we all just kind of get this more homogenized accent. Or another example that is really horrible is just a lot of cultures in a lot of different countries will get like plastic surgeries to try to look like certain celebrities or movie stars from the US. So it's just that kind of toxic, unrealistic standard that is set from the US. Next on this list is the natural beauty that America has. Not gonna lie, this is my personal favorite. I think America is so beautiful. You have so much variation in the landscape. So currently we are actually in Utah. We have the Rocky Mountains here, and if you go south, you have 5 different national parks, and they're all beautiful. And it's the idea of the Great American Road Trip. Like, you can go to the Oregon coast where it's moody and mossy. You can drive through California and go to some of the most beautiful beaches, the red deserts, the wide open plains, the Appalachian Mountains, the Gulf coasts. It's endless, and there's so much of it here, which I'm very grateful for. The flip side of that is that we don't tend to treat it well. It is incredibly frustrating to hear laws passed to loosen regulations and roll back on limits that have been set to try to protect the land, the air, the water. It scares me, because why are we so hell-bent on destroying the earth? I don't understand. There are just so many problems here. We have over-farming, we have non-regenerative farming practices, we have factory farming and lakes of toxic poo. There's fracking and oil refining, subsidizing and promoting fossil fuels. There are things like pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, and cities are just continuously growing bigger. These are just some of the examples that you hear daily. It's terrifying. And it's frustrating because that feels like we can't make a difference. As an individual person, a lot of that comes from the government and big corporations. But then on top of that, we are also a very consumeristic society. We really like our convenience. We like our single-use plastic. We have a major overconsumption problem. We're just generally very wasteful. It's like we're hell-bent on destroying the earth and ignoring it while it's happening. I can't even say this. The next thing that I like about America is the freedom that you have here. To a lot of Americans, this is their number one thing why they think America is so great, is the fact that they have so many freedoms. This is a very loaded topic. So Americans are so worried about keeping their freedoms that they make decisions that have negative impact on others and themselves. If you look at some other countries that have a few more rules, a few more regulations, for example, Canada or England, they, I would not say, are any less free, but I would say that they have a healthier and a happier population. So let's break it down into just a few of the freedoms that come to mind. The first one is freedom of speech, which is great. I'm glad that we can say whatever we want, whenever we want. However, that's not an issue in a lot of the other developed countries in the world. And a lot of times it can be used for things such as hate speech and bigotry and racism. And it just really tears other people down. But because we can, we sometimes do, and I don't agree that we should. Another big freedom is owning guns. And again, I don't want to get into the gun debate. However, our country has the highest rates of gun violence in any other developed country, and that is terrifying. And I am not saying let's get rid of all guns. I'm saying maybe we should put a few more regulations in place to try to keep innocent people and children a little bit safer. There's less regulations on food. You can go out and buy a big gulp for breakfast if you want. There's not a lot in place to stop corporations from adding very harmful additives to our food and processed stuff. Like, yes, there is the FDA. However, the FDA allows a lot of things that are completely banned in other countries. And on top of that, what is so great about the freedom to choose to consume whatever you want? If it leads to diabetes and obesity and heart disease, these things are running rampant in our country. Our people are hurting so much because we want the freedom to choose and eat whatever we want. Because of that, it places a lot of the responsibility and burden for the consumer to be super educated. And when you don't do that for yourself, then you are the victim because you do not know what you're putting into your body. And years down the road, we are all sick. But freedom, right? I was talking to a New Zealander about the speed limit conundrum. So in New Zealand, the speed limits, they're just a lot lower in general. And then a lot of the people don't speed. Of course, there are some that will zip down the motorway, but the majority don't see the need to speed. But here in America, we're obsessed with the freedom to choose. So a lot of people choose to drive 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. And that's kind of the running joke. Oh, the speed limit is 70, then the base that I'm going to be driving is 80. It's just the overall mentality of, would you rather drive the legal limit and make it a safe environment for everybody? Or would you prefer the freedom to go as fast as you want to endanger yourself and everybody else on the road? And to me, I think that that embodies freedom. We have the choice to hurt other people and to make it a much more dangerous and hostile environment. But a lot of Americans, when they hear anything about taking away freedoms or setting regulations or limits, they automatically go to the other extreme, like, oh, we're going to be communist and we are going to be Nazi Germany. Moving on to the next one. Diversity in culture is something that I really love about America. America is a melting pot. Like, we have earned that title for ourselves. The very idea and the principles that founded America are immigrants. Every single person in the US can trace their lineage back to an immigrant, whether that was themselves or way back to their ancestor. And that is just such a fun and beautiful concept, and I think pretty unique to the US. It's also incredible. I love the people here. There are some of the friendliest, nicest, most helpful people. Like, that is one of the stereotypes that a lot of people from other countries have about Americans, is all of those wonderful things. And in my experience going to other countries, they tend to be very cliquey. Whereas here, I feel like you can bump into somebody on the street, sit there and chat for 3 hours and swap life stories and become their best friend by the end of it. We're very open people. On the flip side of that, I find it hard to understand why Americans, who I just talked about in such a golden light, we're so helpful, we're so friendly, we're so open and loving, why we have such a big racism problem. Like, we don't tolerate other cultures very well, even though we are a melting pot. Like, there's just so much contradiction threaded throughout this, but it is such a big problem that we have here, and it's not okay. And I think maybe part of it is that we do have so much variety in people. There are so many different cultures and belief systems, and we're all trying to be unified under one flag. And I think that just causes a lot of friction and a lot of disagreement. And instead of being loving and understanding, we tend to turn to mean words and just hateful actions. The way we treat others sometimes in this country is not okay. Convenience is the next thing on my list. So we have Amazon next day shipping. We have 24-hour food and stores open. You can see something online and have it shipped to you. Like, that's a big deal for a lot of people in other countries. We have food delivery, internet and connectivity pretty much wherever you go in the States. We have convenience food. Pretty much anything you can think of, you can get here whenever you want, wherever you want, and it's a beautiful thing. On the flip side, I would say that it's pretty detrimental to both our own health and the health of the environment. Because we can go out and get a cheeseburger at midnight, and who hasn't? And we also have all the single-use plastic, and we're just pretty wasteful with it all. And we overconsume, and it's all in the beautiful name of capitalism. Healthcare is another big one that I came up with for this list. Because we incentivize being a doctor, like, it's one of the most prestigious jobs that you can have in America, and it is also notoriously one of the best paying jobs out there. It has incentivized a lot of people to become doctors, so we have plenty of them, which is a great thing. And there is some of the best healthcare here in the US. Like, people will fly in from other countries to get very, very amazing and specialized care. A lot of Americans will also say that you don't have to wait. The socialized healthcare countries, you hear the stories about how they have to wait months and months to get treatment or to get seen by a doctor for their falling off foot or something. Those extreme stories are not true. And honestly, I would say that we have the same problem here in the States as well a lot of the times. I think it's just very area dependent. I have family that lives 2 hours from the closest hospital, and they go to the ER and they have to wait hours and hours to get their child seen. Like, it happens here just as well as it happens in other countries. I think that COVID has really poked a lot of holes into this system. I think a lot of the poor healthcare workers are completely overworked. They are burned out. They are working in pretty hostile environments that are underfunded, and it's not the dream that they set out for. They worked so hard to become doctors and healthcare providers, and it is a terrible job these days because of all of these things that are going on. And in turn, I think that the overall healthcare is degrading in the US. Another example that I'm pretty passionate about is having a child here sucks. In most other countries, having a baby is totally free. Here in the US, even if you have a completely uncomplicated delivery, if you sit in a hospital room and you push out your baby and there are medical people present, it will cost you like $7,000. And let's not talk about the poor people that end up having complicated pregnancies. They need a lot more care. They end up getting a C-section. That will cost them up to $30,000 to have a baby. And then don't get me started on health insurance. I think that everybody in America hates how the health insurance works here. There's not a single person that does not think it's a scam. It is pure insanity that we sit here and pay expensive premiums every single month to be covered, and it only covers like the bare minimum. So for many, many people, if you do get unlucky and end up with cancer, or if you have a very bad car accident, for example, and you need weeks of hospitalization and medical care, you end up being $100,000 in debt. It doesn't make any sense. It's just a very messed up system, and I feel like nobody's happy about it, but nobody knows how to change anything in it. So those are the main points of my list. Again, I get confused myself whether I like it or not. One night, in my rage and frustration, I came up with a list of what I hate the most. So just rapid fire, real fast here. I feel unsafe. It feels like taxes don't go to anything except the military. We have horrible roads here. The public schools are horrible places for children. Universities are price gouging and saddling young kids with debt when they've never had financial education to know they're getting into years and years and thousands of dollars into debt. The healthcare is overrun and degrading. Health insurance is a scam. Politicians are all horrible and nobody feels they can do anything about it. We're forcing women to have babies by offering no maternal or childcare support. Every day you hear another horrible story like the politicians are passing a ruling, extending their lunches, but then voting down some legislation to give poor children free lunches. You hear too frequent stories of blacks being shot for existing, just to name a few. To me, it feels like America is a first world country that is slipping away. We were taught as children that America is the #1 nation, that we were founded by God, that everybody looks up to us and wants to be us. And now it does not feel that way at all. Patriotism in our generation is dying because everybody is so unhappy with how things are going. Recently, I heard a discussion about how the Middle Eastern countries used to be the world leaders. If you look at that period in time, you'll see a lot of the constellations are named after them. They made huge leaps and accomplishments in things like mathematics, algebra. They were the innovators for a very long time. They were the world leaders. And if you look at them now, you wonder what happened. It sort of feels like that is what is happening to America. Part of me still absolutely loves this place. It is my home. There are still incredible things happening here. There are still very beautiful places and beautiful people. There are just a lot of things that need to change. And I think that we all want to see the change. We just don't know how to make the change. I was about to apologize for my strong opinions and maybe some controversial thoughts thrown into there, but I'm going to be an arrogant American and say, no, I'm not going to apologize. These are my thoughts. This is my heart. If you have anything to add or things that I missed out or disagreements with anything I have said, please let me know. I'd love to hear it. Again, like I do think America is a beautiful place and it can be a great place to live. It's just a bit tricky right now. And yep, those are all my thoughts. Thank you so much for being here and I will see you guys next week. Bye.